Hi guys, Jen here. Welcome back for more Fresh Hell. I wanted to get back today to the theme that I've kind of been going through on some of these videos, which is reality testing. We get information from a lot of different sources, and it's hard to tell sometimes whether um, the people that we're listening to are reliable or not. And so I wanted to point out what some red flags are that can kind of tip you off uh, as to when somebody's not being completely honest or when they're trying to hide or cover up the weakness of the case that they're making. And the one that really not triggers me, but that just infuriates me because it's become more and more prevalent over the last 30 years, which oddly enough coincides with when Fox News first showed up, is this thing of people doing these roundtables or discussions and people interrupting, people shouting over the top of other people, people making personal insults. Um, all of those are red flags as far as I'm concerned. Because, if you have a good point and you can make a strong case, you don't have any need to shout over other people or to interrupt them or to belittle them personally. It's a totally different thing between saying you're making a stupid argument and saying you're stupid. And the latter is what we see a lot of on places like Fox News, where they're just completely derisive towards anybody that has a political opinion different than the one that they're pushing. Um, and this whole thing about shouting over other people, that is designed to keep the other person from making their point. And it's deployed because the person who's doing the talking over the other person knows that they've got a weak case and they don't want the other person to be able to get out the points that debunk their weak case. And I'll be honest with you, I have wished for years that I could just one time be on one of those shows so that when the person that's doing the talking over and interrupting and all of that, to just stop and say, did your parents not care enough about you to teach you any better about how to behave? Or do you simply have so little respect for them that you behave as if they didn't and don't care about how that reflects upon how they raised you? Because it's one of the two, right? I mean, we all know better. We all know that that's rude behavior. I don't understand why the people who are um, I don't know, you wouldn't call them, what are they, the moderators, I guess, of these shows, why they don't stop it. And I guess it's because of ratings, because maybe, they get better ratings when people are yelling at each other. But of course, the problem with it is not only is it preventing one side from fully making their case, usually it ends up preventing both sides because people, you come at people with the same energy that they show to you. So, if somebody approaches you and they're just rude, that's a lot of times going to trigger you into being rude back. I know the other day I'd made a comment on Blue Sky. People were talking about this cryptosporiasis, the explosive diarrhea thing. And somebody had said, well, it's because workers were leaving themselves in the fields. And I was like, not necessarily. I mean, there's been some cases of food contamination in the past that they linked to wild hogs um, depositing their waste in the fields, and then the parasites and the dangerous bacteria then contaminating the produce that was growing in those fields. Um, Also, it's making an assumption that everything is being watered with fully treated city water, which I don't think is the case, particularly not in Mexico, which is where this seems to have originated. And so I made that point, and I said, they had the case where they figured that the E. coli came from wild hogs. This person comes back and is like, well, E. E. coli, you capitalize the E in E. coli. And I was just like, and then went on to be very dismissive and rude. I mean, and there's no need for that. I wasn't rude in my response. I was just like, here's some other factors that maybe you're not taking into account. And when they came back with that, well, for your information, you're supposed to capitalize the E. I was just like, okay, block. I'm done with this person. If that's the kind of energy that you're going to bring to every discussion when somebody approaches you with a point that maybe doesn't align with what you said, but they're being polite about it, you're not somebody that I care about having a discussion with. You're not capable of having an adult discussion that's not combative, and there's no point in doing it. So I don't know why. Like I said, I think it's because of ratings that the moderators on these shows don't keep a lid on things the way they should. But my gosh, just once, I would like to see somebody come back at it and say, what is the matter with you? Did your parents not teach you any manners? Do you really feel like this is the way to have a constructive discussion? Because it's not. You're going to come with that kind of energy, and that's what you're going to get back, and the whole thing is going to devolve into a screaming match. And as somebody who, I'm one of those people who routinely will engage with information that I dispute coming from a stranger. Um, there was a woman in the doctor's waiting room when I took my mom to the podiatrist months ago, who was sitting over there just spouting off all this crap about immigrants, immigration. I don't know why we don't have more of them here than in Texas, because our minimum wage is higher, and something about they were using all of these public services. And so I feel like if somebody's putting out garbage into the ether and I'm within earshot, it's kind of an assault on my intelligence, and I don't like it, and I will speak up and push back. So when she said that, I was like, well, actually, um, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for any type of welfare assistance. They can't get food stamps. They can't get SNAP benefits. They can't get Medicaid. There's a lot of things they can't get. She was like, well, if they go to the hospital, they get treated. I was like, yeah, if they show up at the emergency room, they get treated. Okay. I was like, but realistically, they're paying taxes. They're paying FICA taxes. They're paying Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid taxes that they are not eligible to ever receive benefits for. So if you look at it that way, they're more than paying for the few people that may end up in the emergency room every year, maybe getting free treatment for an emergency that keeps them from dying. I don't begrudge them that. So then she went into, I've never understood why there's not more of them here than in Texas, because the minimum wage here in Arkansas is higher, and Democrats did that. And I'm like, no, actually, what happened with that is we had a citizen initiative back, I don't remember when that was now. It's probably been 10 or 12 years ago. We had a citizen initiative to raise the minimum wage, and the people of Arkansas went to the polls and voted that that's what they wanted to do. Um, so then she started going into something about how when they did it in Seattle, all these restaurants went out of business. And I knew that was a lie, but they came and called my mother at that point for her appointment, which I'm sure was probably a relief to her because she probably doesn't like hearing me correct strangers. But I'm one of those people that does that. And so it's always just been a mystery to me why anybody would go on one of those shows and allow somebody to walk all over them. And the same thing on Fox, where they have routinely done things about like cut his mic, um, insulted people that they had on for guests, and then not let them speak. And I've always wondered why those guests don't just say, you know, I thought you invited me on because you wanted to hear my perspective, but obviously you're more interested in putting words into my mouth and you don't need me here for that. And then just take the mic off and get up and leave. Um, I, you're not going to come out any worse if you do that, but I do want you to pay attention to that. Um, who's doing the interrupting? Who's doing the talking over the top of other people? Who's using personal insults? Because when you hear that, that is a red flag for somebody who has a weak argument. And if they can deflect the conversation and distract from, the topic where they don't really have a good case, then they can get through that segment without showing everybody that they don't have any, they don't have a solution to anything. So when you see somebody doing that, go look up what the topic is that they're talking about. Go and look it up, and use something like Ground News to find out what the bias of your source is, and look at several of them and decide which one sounds legit. So that would be my suggestion on that. I want to get back to also recommending other people's channels that I enjoy. And for today, the one I want to give a shout out to is there's a guy named Brad Lancaster who is out in Tucson, Arizona, who I don't know how many years ago, probably 20, decided that he was going to start, uh, instead of watching rainwater just run off down the street in front of his house, he was going to try to capture some of that water so he could grow stuff. And so he did that. And at first, what he was doing was illegal, because he cut through the curb and he dug out these street side basins to capture water. And then it would create a water bubble under the ground. But it also gives them less runoff to deal with. So it's helpful for the storm sewer system in the city. It is a very dry place, it is very hot. So he's able to grow things there between the street and the sidewalk that give shade to people walking down the street, shade the street so it doesn't get as hot, doesn't release as much heat back at night. And over time, what he started out doing, kind of a guerrilla operation, has really caught on, and the city of Tucson has adopted it. And they're doing it in a lot more places. So I would recommend going to check out his channel because, he's kind of a quirky guy, but, gosh, what a great but simple idea. And, something that's really helping to improve the local community where he lives. And I love that kind of thing. So I would really recommend going to see him. And the other thing is, he did a mashup with Tony Joey Santor from Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't here about a month ago. And I was like in geek heaven because, he's walking around showing Joey Tony the basins and the plants that they've planted there. And uh, Joey Tony is doing his thing of identifying all the plants. And it was just great. Great to see them both together. So I do recommend checking that out. And I appreciate you watching. If you agree or enjoy or feel like I have anything of value to say, please give me a like, a share, or subscribe. Do all the things. And once again, I appreciate you joining me. Thanks so much. Bye.